Hello friend, and welcome back to my channel, Blue Nose Trading. My name is Tori Solis, and today I'll be showing you how I pull freeform handles out of clay. Mittens is here with me today, and she's going to be helping because she is, of course, very helpful. Let's go over some things we need to get started. First, you're going to need a bucket of water. Warm water if it's cold outside and you want a little treat. You also need some clay, obviously, and a place to put your freshly pulled handles. I like to set my handles out onto plaster, and today I am using a plaster bat for this purpose. When grabbing a hunk of clay to pull handles with, I like a piece that is somewhat firm, still soft, but not smooshy. This isn't a hard rule, it's just a personal preference. If the clay is too soft, it can break off while you're pulling. You also want a piece that is free of air bubbles. This chunk is fresh off the block, so that shouldn't be an issue here, but if you are working with scraps or reclaim, you would want to wedge them very well. You can check out this video I made here if you'd like to learn more about how and why to wedge your clay. Before I get started with pulling handles, I'm going to squeeze and squish my chunk of clay in the downward conical shape. My instructor always said to make a carrot, but in my literal making mind, a typical grocery store carrot is far too skinny, so make a State Fair award-winning sized carrot thing. Once you have your clay into a shape somewhat inspired by a carrot, you are ready to start pulling handles. I'm using my left hand to hold the clay and keep that hand pretty dry. I'm going to use my right hand to pull, and I'm going to keep that hand very wet. You also want to keep the clay you are pulling wet. I'm working over this bucket to contain the mess and to have a place to quickly dip my hand to get more water as needed. Because we are working with so much water, it is better to have a clay that is a bit more firm to start out with and not already oversaturated. You can pull super soft clay, and some people might enjoy it and prefer it, but I am heavy-handed and prefer to work with a more firm clay body. In my experience, softer clay is easier to break off, warp, or just mess up in general. To pull a handle, you want to close your hand to shape your fingers into the shape of a handle that you would like, and pull down on the clay that is somewhat carrot-like gently with a super wet hand that glides down the clay. You pull downward with your wet hands, altering the position of the clay to keep the pull even. When I'm saying pull, I am not referring to a forceful action. If the clay is breaking off or ripping when you are trying to pull your handles, you're using too much force, not enough water, or a combination of those two things. With very wet hands, grab the clay from the top and glide downward with a light squeeze worth of pressure. It's best to do many passes of light squeezes to shape your handle, as opposed to one grand pull of force that is more likely to break than shape your handle. The actual action of pulling is kind of nuanced and hard to explain. After watching many different potters and teaching myself to do this and being shown by professionals, I'm convinced that this is just something that everyone comes into on their own with practice. This is a repetitive motion that will take practice to figure out. You need to practice and pay attention to the way you are holding your hands, the positioning of your fingers, and the shape of handle that positioning is creating. Think of your hands like the die of an extruder and adjust them accordingly. I also like to flip my handles around to adjust the sides of each handle while pulling. If I don't flip my handles while I'm working, I find that I end up with one side of the handle that is slightly thicker than the other side. It's just going to take a lot of time and practice to figure out what you're doing and then adjust it slowly to what you want to be doing. After I pull a length of handle that I'm satisfied with, I usually pinch the bottom and then pinch off the top. I then bend the handle into my preferred shape and place it on a plaster slab on its side to firm up. After I fill up the plaster slab with fresh handles, I cover the slab with a cloth and let it sit in my studio for a couple of hours to allow the handles time to get firm. After a couple hours, the clay is still soft but not soggy. You don't want these handles to be so dry that they crack when you bend them, but you also don't want them to be so floppy that they don't hold their form. It's a fine line, so check back on your drying handles often. When the handles are just right, I move them to a damp box for storage. A damp box is a plastic tote that has a layer of pottery plaster in the bottom to help maintain moisture. A damp box will put the drying time of your pottery on pause, meaning you can store lots of handles at the perfect firmness and then pull them out as you need them over time. If you'd like to learn how to make a damp box, check out my video that I made here. I like to keep a whole box full of handles to work from. I also like to do all of my work in larger batches in general as part of how I function as a person. There are lots of ways to make handles and endless shapes and styles of handles to explore. I hope that you can find the perfect handle that feels just right for you and your work. Part of what makes pulled handles so awesome to me is that each of us will make them slightly differently based on not only our preferences, but the natural differences in the size and shapes of our hands. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. You can find my current available ceramic work on my website, bluenosetrading.com. If you'd like to help support the channel for early video access, you can become a channel member right here on YouTube. For more ceramic art videos, be sure to subscribe to this channel, Blue Nose Trading. Remember that you have great ideas that are worth exploring, drink plenty of water, and I will see y'all in the next video.